Are you guys ready for the most dramatic recap in League of Legends history? Worlds 2025 is a story of absolute drama where the big favorites crumbled under pressure and legends on the brink of elimination made history. How did T1, a team that barely made it to the playoffs, manage to achieve an impossible historic three-peat? Who was the main choke of the tournament? And what did Faker do to win his World Championship title number 6? We've prepared a complete breakdown of the entire championship for you guys. Get ready, it's gonna be quite hot. Let us start as always with the play-in stage. It used to be a real festival of hope for smaller regions. This year Riot Games decided to go for minimalism and, to be honest, almost destroyed it. The play-in format was reduced to a single best-of-5 series between the 4 seeds of the LCK and LPL, T1 versus Invictus Gaming, or IG. For the first time, we didn't see teams like LCP or LTE fighting for a spot. We got an early but low-ranking LCK versus LPL final on the very first day. Of course, this kind of cemented high viewership numbers, but where was the spirit of globalism? Where was the opportunity for outsiders to create a real fairy tale? The way I see it, it felt like a way to quickly weed out the extras. The T1 versus IG series itself was certainly high quality. T1, the 5-time world champions, found themselves in the play-in, which in itself is a symbol of failure in their home region. T1 won 3-1, and while the score may seem confident, the second game showed that IG was ready to put up a fight. However, T1 coped with the drama and pressure. Thus, the play-in only emphasized that Riot wants to move on to the Battle of the Titans as quickly as possible and doesn't care about the smaller stories. The 2025 play-in was important because of the new fearless draft format, banning the selected champion in subsequent games of the series. It immediately became clear that teams playing in a so-called meta-working style would suffer. We saw how T1 and IG had to change their compositions after the first game, which requires an incredibly wide pool of champions. Generally speaking, I did like this format because it adds variety to the combinations. But along with a simplified play-in, it reinforced the feeling that we were seeing a tournament for only 8 to probably 10 prepared teams. As for the Swiss stage, it was the biggest disappointment for me. We all expected it to be an arena of chaos and epic comebacks thanks to a fearless draft. Instead, in my opinion, we got a boring confirmation of the hierarchy. It remained intact. Lower seeds such as Fnatic and PSG Talent were quickly eliminated without winning a single game. Most of the matches remain in the best-of-1 format. This directly contradicts the idea of fearless draft, which should be revealed in best-of-3 or best-of-5. In best-of-1, teams simply took their strongest champions if they were not banned, which led to quick and one-sided defeats. We did have the drama of T1 advancing to the playoffs with a 3-2 score, but the total number of truly pivotal moments was minimal. In fact, viewer interest dropped noticeably and viewership numbers only rose when T1 was playing. Well, that's not surprising, you know. Let us take a closer look at the matches of this stage. First, let us take a look at those who showed true dominance. With a score of 3-0, we have 2 teams, KT Rolster and Anyone's Legend, or AL. KT Rolster entered the playoffs showing absolute team dominance. They faced Top Esports, or TES, who were the favorites, but KT shocked many analysts by dismantling the Chinese threat with a score of 2-0. It wasn't just a win, but a victory of discipline over individual skill. Even when TES had an early lead, KT did not lose their cool. They held their ground and then completely turned the tide with flawless execution of team fights. TES's weak link was exposed under the pressure of fearless draft. Their key initiators made fatal mistakes, while KT, thanks to their strategic flexibility, particularly from BDD and Cuz, punished the Chinese team for their systematic miscalculations. The second team with a 3-0 score is AL. They not only advanced to the playoffs but also declared themselves a potential dark horse of the tournament, confirming their status with a victory over CFO and by defeating Gen G in the Swiss stage. The foundation of AL's success was their frenzied, uncompromising aggression. They demonstrated exceptional skill in executing deep dive plays into their opponent's backline, swiftly punishing the slightest positional miscues. However, there is a notable drawback to this strength. Analysis of AL's games revealed their weakness is late-game macro play. This means that their strategy is only effective when the game ends quickly. But even that does not diminish their victory in the last game of the Swiss stage. With a score of 3-1, three powerful teams advanced to the playoffs: GNG, HLE, and G2 Esports. For most analysis takes, GNG should have been in a 3-0 pool. Their only loss against AL was the one misstep that forced them to finish 3-1. Even that loss did not feel like a choke, but rather a high-class match. GNG quickly learned their lesson and returned to their clean, almost flawless style, effectively utilizing Fearless Draft. HLE represent that consistent LCK force. Their 3-1 run was marked by efficiency and clean execution. They are not prone to risky, crazy drafts, but their wide champion pool and discipline allowed them to consistently outplay most opponents in the macro phase, that is. G2 Esports has traditionally shown the most unpredictable play. They finished 3-1 only because they withstood incredible pressure and did not collapse after their own wild mistakes. They started the stage with a crushing defeat to TES, which made European fans clutch their hands. This defeat highlighted their tendency to go big or go home, either total domination or swift failure. However, G2 quickly pulled themselves together, as their strength lies in their creative approach to Fearless Draft and unconventional picks. And now we come to the most interesting part. It was here in the 3-2 pool that the main drama of the tournament unfolded. Remember how T1 didn't make it to the guaranteed LCK seeds and fought for a slot in the play-in? We thought that was the end of the drama, but it only went on in the Swiss stage. In previous years, T1 had comfortably won this stage 3-1, but this year it turned into a real nightmare. T1 found themselves on the brink of elimination, reaching a critical score of 1-2. From being the favorites, they became a team on the brink of disaster. And only thanks to 2 consecutive victories, they were able to save their place in the playoffs, with a nervous 3-2 score. Each of the last 2 games could have been a shameful elimination. The first victory over FlyQuest was expected, but kind of uninspired. Honestly, T1 was just lucky to get a weaker opponent. But then there was a breakdown. The game against CFO was not just a loss, it was a shock. T1 played out of sync and completely lost control of the macro game. They gave away almost all the dragons, Herald, Void Grubs, everything. T1 focused on Atakan, but even there, they failed the team fight, and then they gave away Baron Nashor. I don't know about you guys, but I was most surprised by the player Doggo on Draven. His pick was daring, and he executed it brilliantly. A solo kill, first blood, and then a 1v1 kill on Gumayushi. Doggo had an advantage over the enemy ADC of more than 2000 gold and finished the game with stats of 6-0-12. Doggo and K-Wing played exceptionally cleanly, while for T1, for example, Owner and Va seemed completely absent throughout the game. Then T1 faced GNG, and it was a complete rout with a score of 23-3. Coach Mata stated bluntly, "We are not 100%. Some players are not feeling well, staying in a hotel here didn't help. Crowds, some breathing, bronchial issues, but every team is facing similar problems." This explains the disorganization and uncharacteristic mistakes we saw. T1 was fighting not only their opponents but also their own condition. After bitter defeats in the early stages, the matches against 100 Thieves and Movistar Koi were critical points of no return for T1. The series against 100 Thieves was not just a victory, but a critical test of individual skill. 100 Thieves demonstrated high-quality disciplined play. In the first game, they deservedly took the initiative, thanks in particular to Dola's excellent defense and Quid's solo kill. The game was stretched to the limit. T1 did win, not because of their teamwork, but thanks to a flash of individual genius. It was Faker who delivered the key ultimate on Talia, which turned the battle around and secured T1 the Baron, Dragon Soul, and the victory. This confirmed that T1 wins when a player's pure skill outweighs the logic of the game. The second game highlighted the difference in priorities. 100 Thieves chased kills, T1 chased objectives. In the end, T1's objective advantage prevailed, and they closed out this series 2-0, although having a feeling that 100 Thieves had forced them to play at the limit of their abilities. The series against Movistar Koi was utter anarchy. While 100 Thieves played cleanly, Koi and T1 staged a circus of mistakes where the winner was the one who made fewer mistakes in the final moment. T1 played incredibly irresponsibly, making gross individual mistakes on a regular basis, like Gumayushi teleported right under Mordekaiser, Carrier died out of nowhere. Movistar Koi received massive gifts and had a huge advantage in the first game. However, they failed to capitalize on this gift. Their weakness under pressure proved fatal. MKOI's key player Jojo Pion simply missed his ultimate into empty space in the decisive battle, destroying his team's chances of an upset. Faker secured the victory for T1 in both games. He was a 1v9 factor who played flawlessly, especially on Azir stomping Jojo, while his team was drowning in mistakes. It was thanks to his class and ability to save the situation in clutch moments that T1 was able to advance from the Swiss stage. Thus, in the Swiss stage, T1 showed one of their weakest performances in recent years on the international arena. Losses against teams that are generally not among the top at the time of the Swiss stage cast doubt on their stability. However, T1 should not be underestimated. According to the players themselves, their health problems are behind them, and the best-of-1 format does not reflect the team's true strength. Therefore, let us take a look how their game has changed in the playoffs. But first, let us talk a little about the two other teams that made it to the playoffs with a 3-2 record. TES's path to the playoffs is a classic story that we have been seeing for several years now. Incredible talent that crumbles under pressure. TES started out brilliantly, crushing G2 and 100 Thieves. Their individual skill was unquestionable. Their 3-2 finish came after a total collapse in the decisive match against KT Rolster. TES, who had every chance to go 3-0 or 3-1, blew the best-of-3 series, confirming their propensity to choke. They were unable to adapt to fearless draft and the pressure KT was putting on them, and once again showed their mental fragility at a crucial moment. CFO is a strong regional team, but their 3-2 run confirmed that they lacked the strategic depth to compete with the top teams in the LCK and LPL. Their 1-2 loss to AL in the playoff match was very telling. Analysts noted that while CFO played solidly and cleanly in all 3 games, they consistently lost in the macro game in the late stages. Their inability to finish the game against a strong opponent forced them to play additional matches. The Swiss stage is over, and apart from the lucky 8 ones, we have a whole pool of teams whose journey turned out to be too short. The most dramatic experience was for those who were eliminated with a score of 2-3. One game separated them from the playoffs. For me, BLG's elimination was the biggest shock and personal disappointment of Worlds 2025, because I'm a big fan of theirs. We all remember their incredible journey, the semifinals in 2023 and the finals in 2024. BLG entered this tournament as the #1 seed in the LPL and were the clear favorites to compete for the title. It was impossible to imagine that such a powerful team would lose their position so quickly, being eliminated from the Swiss stage. Their downfall began unexpectedly. Already in the first round, BLG lost to 100 Thieves, a team that no one expected them to lose to. Although they were able to pull themselves together and win a few matches, the final nail in the coffin was the survival match against TES, which they lost 1-2. It was a bitter quote-unquote team kill from another LPL representative. BLG showed a striking lack of readiness for the tournament. They were unable to maintain their form, which was at its peak in 2024, and seemed to find their gaming identity too late. Their 2-3 exit is a tragedy for the LPL and personally for me as their fan. It showed that even the most titled teams are not immune to a rapid decline. FlyQuest and Movistar Koi pushed their potential to the max, making T1 and other favorites nervous. Their 2-3 elimination was due to the fact that despite all their efforts, the individual class of Asian stars, as was the case with T1, proved to be an insurmountable barrier for them in the decisive best-of-3 series. 100 Thieves, Team Secret Wales, and VKS won 3. These teams managed to get one win but then ran into structural limitations. They showed flashes of talent, for example 100 Thieves beat BLG, But overall, their champion pool and insufficient macro play prevented them from advancing in the best-of-3 format. Fnatic and PSG Talent, 0-3. For these teams, the tournament was a complete failure. They failed to secure a single victory and confirmed that their level of play was the lowest among all participants in this year's Swiss stage. The Swiss stage has concluded, weeding out the weak and unfortunately some beloved favorites such as BLG. Now we move on to the knockout stage, or the playoffs. Here the format changes to best of 5, where teams compete for 3 wins, and most importantly, the Fearless Draft is also in effect. The series between Gen G and HLE became an exhausting marathon, ending in a victory for Gen G, 3-1. HLE had a talented roster, but their finish in the playoffs came due to a catastrophic loss of concentration at crucial moments. HLE started strong on the first game but became passive. Gen G punished them for this, outplaying HLE in team fights, where support Duro played the role of savior thanks to his clutch initiations. The second game lasted 58 minutes and 51 seconds, making it the longest game of the entire World's 2025 Championship and the culmination of all of HLE's mental problems. Although HLE had an excellent draft, the top lane turned into a disaster. Top laner Zeus on Ambessa was completely destroyed by Kin on Gwen, giving Gen G a huge advantage in the early game. Despite that, HLE managed to come back and then win the sole point. They had 2 or even 3 opportunities to end the game, but individual mistakes proved fatal. The only reason this game lasted so long was Viper, HLE ADC. He played flawlessly from start to finish and did not die once until the 59th minute. His incredible performance and survivability prevented Gen G from ending the game earlier. On a third map, HLE was able to pull themselves together and respond with a quick victory, taking advantage of Gen G's weak composition in the early stages and a mistake by jungler Canyon. On the last map, Gen G did not give HLE a chance, securing a clean closeout. Canyon redeemed himself for his previous defeat by completely dominating the map. Gen G advanced, confirming their superior resilience. HLE unfortunately proved that individual mistakes under pressure are their biggest problem on the international stage. The KT vs CFO series was the most one-sided quarterfinal, ending in a clean, quick 3-0 sweep. This match was a direct illustration of the gap in execution between teams that advanced to the Swiss stage with varying levels of difficulty. KT Rolster completely outplayed CFO in both drafts and execution. They left CFO, who had a limited champion pool with no chance to execute their slow strategy. The presence of the shortest game of the tournament, 24 minutes and 32 seconds, in this series is clear evidence of KT's absolute dominance. It was a demonstrative strategy in the early game where KT simply destroyed CFO, not giving them a chance to even get close to the middle of the game. The TES vs G2 series ended in favor of Top Esports, 3-1, and was, above all, a psychological redemption for TES, who was struggling with their cliché of mental breakdowns. G2, the last hope of the West, managed to create drama but failed to finish it. On the first and third maps, TES showed their championship LPL form, dominating on all lanes. They played cleanly and methodically, easily closing out the maps thanks to the strength of players 369 and Cream. In the third game, we would like to highlight the excellent play of TES player 369 on Aatrox, who not only earned a triple kill but also secured Ocean Soul, Baron Nashor, and overall map victory for his team. On the second map, G2 scored their only victory, taking advantage of TES' trademark mental error. After a strong start by G2, TES managed to come back, but then they catastrophically failed in their attempt on Baron, throwing away resources and losing players. It was classic TES sabotage that allowed G2 to even the score. On the last map, TES proved their resilience. When G2 tried to take the lead with aggression in the mid lane, they lost an important team fight which secured TES the Baron and a quick end to the series. The series between T1 and AL turned into a grueling 5-game thriller, 3-2, reminiscent of their dramatic meeting at MSI. The match was like a crazy roller coaster ride. The teams constantly exchanged advantages, and AL took a 2-1 lead by playing very aggressively. T1 responded with a victory in the fourth game, even in the score. In the decisive fifth game, T1 went on a crazy experiment during the pick phase. They chose Seraphine as the support and Dr. Mundo as jungler. After the series, owner commented on these picks. To be honest, we didn't really think about it that much. We had just played a little bit with Seraphine and the other champions. Since these champions had appeared quite often before, we were already somewhat familiar with them. But I was the only one who had no experience playing Dr. Mundo, so I was quite nervous. Since I didn't even know his skills thoroughly, I read the skill tips during the draft and asked Coach Tom about runes, item builds, and other builds. Oh yeah, later on they also let me know that my item build was a little lacking, or how it could be improved. The fifth game was incredibly even and tense. T1, playing with completely untested champions, managed to win Hextech Soul thanks to a brilliant smite from owner and win the final decisive battle for the Elder Dragon. T1 won 3-2 and advanced. This series proved that despite instability and crazy experiments, the individual skill and depth of the T1 team are so high that they're capable of winning best of 5, even when choosing champions at the World Championship that they have not trained with before. I was very impressed by this. The semifinals began with Genji's sensational defeat by KT Rolster with a score of 1-3. The series was a direct demonstration of the LCK champions' unexpected mental breakdown at the highest stage. KT's victory was due not so much to their extraordinary play as to the critical, uncharacteristic mistakes of the favorites. Game after game, Genji made fatal miscalculation. Chovy made incredible mistakes, such as a solo death and a disastrous game on Orianna in Game 3, where Ruler and Duro demonstrated poor positioning and unsuccessful initiations in key battles. KT Rolster acted methodically and cleanly. They took full advantage of these gifts. BDD was the key figure, completely outplaying Chovy in the mid lane and providing KT with the necessary momentum. KT won because they were more stable and disciplined in crucial team fights, while Genji could not handle the pressure, ending their tournament run with a bitter taste of self-destruction. The last semi-final was the most one-sided match of the playoffs. T1 crushed TES with a clean 3-0, once again confirming TES' historical stigma as a team that cannot handle the pressure against the LCK. T1's victory happened thanks to an extraordinary number of uncharacteristic mistakes on the part of TES, especially in critical phases. The most talked about moment was in the third game where TES jungler Kanavi on Kiana blatantly sabotaged his team's draft. He took key resources and gold from his carries, Draven and Aurora, overloading Kiana to no benefit to TES strategy. This rendered the team's composition ineffective. T1 meanwhile played with pinpoint accuracy. Interestingly, support Carrier showed a unique highlight here. He transformed into a wolf and passed between the enemy towers T1 and T2, remaining invisible on the minimap. Carrier could only be seen when the camera was pointed directly at him. This stealth maneuver allowed him to get behind TES and catch them off guard. After a brilliant 3-0 victory, legendary mid laner Faker was quite modest in his interview. "Oh, personally, I wasn't in the best shape. I didn't perform at the level I'm satisfied with, but our team was able to consistently exploit our opponent's mistakes, and that's how we won." This statement perfectly sums up the nature of T1's victory. Even when their star wasn't at his best, the team was able to crush their opponent through discipline and teamwork. The World's 2025 final, which was a revival of the classic Telecom Wars, ended in an exhausting 5-game drama. T1 defeated KT Rolster 3-2. This series will go down in history as one of the most intense, as T1 once again demonstrated their unmatched resilience in the decisive moments. The game was uneven. KT Rolster, who knocked out the main favorites Genji, showed a strong start each time, gaining an advantage in the early game and even taking a 2-1 lead in a series. However, as is often the case with T1, they found a way out of the most difficult situations, thanks to team fights and individual skill. The key moment that turned the series in T1's favor was the fourth game. When KT was already prepping for victory, T1 jungler owner heroically performed several clutch smites in a row, snatching the dragons right from under KT Cuz's nose. This allowed T1 to take the soul, win that match, and even the score. In the final fifth game, T1 opted for an aggressive dive composition. Unfortunately for KT roster, they immediately failed in the early game. Perfect on Yorick died 3 times from Camille plus Pantheon, Camille plus Galio combos before the 10-minute mark, opening up a clear path to victory for T1. Although KT tried to make a comeback, T1, thanks to Gomayushi's power on Misfortune and Carrier's brilliant initiation, brought the game to its logical conclusion, winning the historic title. This victory marked a series of absolute records in League of Legends esports. This achievement was particularly impressive given that at the very start of the tournament, T1 faced serious drama, fought for the last seed in the Swiss stage, and barely made it to the playoffs with a score of 3-2. The fact that a team that was on the verge of elimination managed to pull itself together, go all the way, and become champions only underscores its greatness. First and foremost, the T1 team became the first in history to win the World Championship 3 times in a row, the so-called three-peats, cementing its era as the most dominant. And the legendary mid laner Faker became a 6-time world champion, an achievement that is unlikely to be surpassed by anyone. The individual award, the most valuable player, was deservedly given to T1's ADC, Gomayushi. His impressive play and consistency, especially on Misfortune in the decisive match, were recognized with the awarding of the statuette by legendary Chinese player Uzi, who entered the Hall of Legends this year. With the telecom wars over and T1's historic triumph complete, it is time to analyze the meta and evaluate the new Fearless Draft format in all its glory. The meta for this World Championship was defined by a combination of control mages and high-impact utility tanks. Xin Zhao was the most popular champion, 28 picks, emphasizing the need for high pressure in the jungle and a tool for early ganks. At the same time, the high win rate of Poppy, 76.9%, and Sion, 66.7%, showed how important it is to have champions who can control enemy dashes or act as a super tough frontline. The most feared pick was Yunara, banned in 56 games, as her win rate when she did get into the game was an impressive 66.7%. The next most banned champions were Azir and Orianna, indicating that teams sought to eliminate versatile, flexible champions with high potential for initiation or counter-initiation. K'Sante, despite being the most picked top laner with 26 picks, was the biggest disappointment with a win rate of only 34.6%, demonstrating that his so-called standardness did not always translate into wins at the highest level. The Fearless Draft format itself, in my opinion, definitely improved Worlds 2025 for viewers. It forced teams to demonstrate the true depth of their pools, which standard formats do not require. We saw T1 take risks by picking atypical champions in the decisive game against AL, and we saw how the high ban pick rate forced teams to adapt on the fly. I think this format is definitely worth keeping, as it directly affects the quality of strategic preparation and makes best-of-5 series more unpredictable. And with that, we conclude our detailed analysis of Worlds 2025, its recap. If you guys enjoyed this video, please support us, like and subscribe to the channel. Also, do write in the comments, what was the most memorable moment of Worlds 2025 for you guys? See you next time over a glass of the most delicious and the finest ale in all of Runeterra.